Welcome to Collector's Corner. You haven't seen me for a while, but I'm glad to be back, and I'm always looking for new collections. These are my friends, Joe Williamson and his wife Jean. Joe and I have been friends from the train room for a long time, and I knew he had clocks, so I asked if I could come over and see them, and when I did, it kind of blew my mind. So we want to share them with you. You'll also notice in the background, as this is being filmed, there's some fabulous lamps. Don't worry, we're going to do those in another segment. Now, even though I'm the appraiser, I am not an expert on clocks. I know a lot about them, but this man has been collecting for how many years, Joe?
Oh, since 1960.
Since the 1960s, so I suspect he knows a little bit more than I do. So I'm going to let Joe tell you about all his clocks. So let's start out with this great big beautiful one.
Okay, this is a Hawina winter halter. I purchased it in 1968 from a family that I stayed my second year of business school in Wilmington, Delaware. And it has 5 tubes. In the back of it, it is a Westminster chime. And it was made in Germany, probably between 1925 and 1928. This is a E.N. Wilkes 30-day regulator, and it was probably manufactured between 1809 and 1887. This is a Seth Thomas No. 2 regulator, and it was probably manufactured around 1875. The regulator term means it has a knob at the bottom of the pendulum that you can regulate whether it runs fast or slow. All right, this is my wife's favorite clock. It's in the kitchen. It's an 8-day Seth Thomas mission clock. It has strike and also keeps good time, and we really like this clock. This is a Seth Thomas No. 5 parlor clock. It's what they call a double dial time and date clock. The patent on it was 1876, and I purchased it in 1989, so I really don't know how old it is, but it tells the time. Also, it tells what month it is, it tells what day of the week it is, and it tells what the date is. This is what I call my Western Union clock. This clock used to be in a railroad station somewhere. I do not know where, but I'm sure they had a Western Union office in it. If you are from the old school, you remember the days with the old radios where you had to have the No. 6 batteries to run the radios. This did take 2 of those 6-volt, or 2 of the 1.5 volt No. 6 batteries. Well, I got tired of buying the batteries, so I went to a local electronics place and purchased a transformer and hooked it up so it had 3 volts coming out of it, plugged it in the electricity, and now I do not have to buy the batteries. If you notice, when this clock gets around to this second hand gets around to the 12, it will automatically rewind itself. It rewinds itself every minute, and if electricity goes off, it will run about 12 to 15 minutes. Here we have a George B. Owen Victorian clock. I purchased it in 1989. And this clock was probably manufactured in 1835 in Winsted, Connecticut. And it does keep good time and and also does strike, has a bell on it that strikes.
Beautiful carving, beautiful pendulum.
This is another one of my favorites. It is a Seth Thomas, and the model is a Tory, T-O-R-Y, and it was manufactured back in the early 1900s. It does have a ceramic face on it, plus it also has the inlaid wood on the bottom below the face. This is probably one of the most expensive clocks I have. It is a 3-weight Grande Sonoric Veniana regulator. They also call them repeaters and also a blind man's clock. This is probably the oldest clock I have. It is the manufacturer on this clock is Brewster and Ingram. It's what they call a beehive style. Probably was manufactured around 1845. This is probably the clock that I have that is one of three that has a lot of sentimental value to it. It's called an Ansonia steeple clock, and it was made by the Ansonia company. This clock was probably built between 1879 and 1920 in New York. This clock was given to us by the lady that sold me the winter holder grandfather's clock when we were married back in 1965. My grandfather and grandmother Williamson owned these clocks, and they're the only ones that were really passed down through the family. The one on the left is what they call a gingerbread, and it's manufactured by Ingram. And the one on the right is manufactured by William L. Gilbert, and it's called a curfew clock. And my wife hates that clock because you can hear it all over the house if the bell rings. This is another 8-day mission clock, and I purchased it back in 2009. I was over on Sanibel Island and in the antique shop. This is an 8-day Gustav Becker clock. He lived between 1850 and 1935. It has decorative weights on it. It has bevel glass in the door. This is my hybrid clock. The face says E. Ingram on it from Bristol, Connecticut. The works were made by E.N. Welch, and the case itself is a Gilbert called a Hera, H-E-R-A. This is a clock that my mother and dad gave me in 1954 for Christmas. And it is a Welby Cuckoo clock. 8-day, strikes on the hour, also strikes on the half hour.
I want to thank Joe and Jean Williamson for opening their home to us today, and Joe for sharing his wonderful collection of clocks. We have really enjoyed it, and I think we've learned a lot. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much for inviting us.